what's up YouTube? Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your rear brake pads on a 2016 Audi Q5. And you'll notice this does have the electric parking brake. And not a big deal. I'll show you how to do that. Even if you don't have the scan tool that will retract that, I'll show you how simple it is to do. But the first thing we need to do before we push this caliper piston back in and get set up to do that, we do need to make sure that we have enough room in the master cylinder, because we are going to be still pushing that hydraulic fluid backwards through the system into the master cylinder. So let's go take a look and make sure that there's room so that when we do that, we're not going to make a big mess. All right, so here's your master cylinder cap right here. And sometimes you do have to take that off to be able to view inside and view the level of fluid or the condition of fluid. This one's a little tricky to get off because of this little plastic piece in the way, but you can take it off. But I can just look down here through the side and I can see that we do have enough room. Since it has not been topped off as the brake pads have worn down, there's still enough room to push this caliper piston backwards and push the fluid back up in here. This does recommend only .4 fluid. Just remember that if you do need to add fluid. And if you're going to change your brake fluid, if this is getting dark or if it's time to change, you can also do a full bleed. But in our case, since we're not going to even open the system, we're not going to need to bleed the brakes after this. All right, so on most of my videos, you'll see this little opening here. I usually just take a flathead screwdriver and just wedge it in there. You can even see it coming out here, and then just pull on that, which pushes the caliper piston back inside the caliper and gives us enough room for the new pads. In this case, of course, it will not move because of this electric motor. The electronic parking brake is preventing us from being able to push that back in. Now, I did another video on a Honda CR-V. So on the Honda, we just took off this connector and just put a battery power to the motor. And as that would turn, it would go in, and then I had to turn it and cycle it with the caliper wind back tool. At least that's what I thought I had to do. That's what I used and it worked. On this one, you don't need to spin the piston as it goes back in. You just push it or pry it in, but we do need to cycle the motor so that it retracts enough so that we can push that back in. So here's our connector, and this plastic is pretty brittle sometimes, but if you push in with your thumb, sometimes I'll also take a little hook, like a little hook tool like this, and get in underneath and just get behind the little piece of plastic right there and pop that off. And we'll just put that out of the way. Now let me see if I can get you down here and give you a better visual of what that looks like. So if we can see inside there, you see we've just got two prongs. So we just need to get a couple little clips and put power to that. And when I say power, I just mean battery, 12-volt power. So we're just gonna use this battery that we've got. We're gonna cycle that. These are just some simple little connectors, and we just need to connect one on one side. I don't even know which is positive and which is negative. I don't really think it matters, because if you get the direction wrong, you can just swap it. These shields are good. Unfortunately, I'm having to peel them back a little bit in order to get in there. And we'll just make sure that those are not touching. Let me just show you here again. Put the screwdriver in there and we pull on that and we cannot get that piston to budge. Now we're gonna put power to it. And it's just kind of arbitrary. You just usually have to guess on the vehicle. So I'm just gonna put the one that's down on negative and the one that's up on the top on positive. And just cycle that for a second. And then let's see if that was the correct direction. Yes, it was. So you can see now we got some movement there in the piston. And let's just do that one more time. And just let that motor run for a few seconds. I don't know if that will stop eventually, but we're just gonna now push that caliper piston back in. I usually like to do just a little at a time and then pull on the caliper piston a little bit, a little bit at a time, just to make sure that you can get that pushed back all the way, at least enough to make room for the new pad material. Let's do a little bit more. All right, that should be good, because we were almost there. The shim's kind of coming loose there, but all right, that's it. Now that we have that pushed all the way back in, we just need to break loose these caliper slide pin bolts here. Pretty easy to get to. These are a 13 millimeter. And you see sometimes when you go to break that loose, the slide pin spins, and that's okay. That means it's not stuck, which is good. It's not bound up in there. But you just hold that in place with a 15 millimeter open end wrench. Okay, so we got those 2 bolts off, set those aside, and then we can just lift this caliper off. Now, of course, this is still connected to our line there, even though the electrical connector is still disconnected. But that should give us enough room, at least, to get in here and swap these pads. Like I said, our shim kind of fell off here, and that's okay. We can pry these pads out of there. Pretty worn down. Same thing, the shim on the inside one fell off too. And then we can pull these slide pins out. Just kind of pull back on the boot and wipe off that grease. And we can put it back in, clear out a little bit more of that grease. And we're gonna use some of this Sil Glide brake grease. It's important that you don't use regular grease, because it will cause those to stick. Put that right back in. And then we pull out the bottom one. And same thing, just clean that one off. Get out as much of that material as we can. Put on some grease. I'm just using a clean part of my glove here to kind of move that around and put those slide pins back in. See, they kind of pop back up on that shoulder, and then just squeeze on the boot to burp out any air or anything that's trapped inside. Now, our new kit did not come with new hardware. We did order that separately though, so we do have the replacement little slides here. They call these abutment clips. We'll just pry these out. You can see that they do wear out pretty good. A little bit of corrosion and rust on there. This is kind of a unique design compared to some of the other clips I've seen. You see these little parts that kind of curve around. It's designed so that when the pad edge is on this, or the backing plate, it's almost like a spring, of course, that keeps it from dragging on the rotor. So that's a unique design, but it's definitely important that you do change those out. Now, this is something I don't usually see. These are usually silver, and these look like they've got some sort of a coating. On this side that the pad rides on is really smooth, and then the underside is almost kind of rubberized. Not something I've seen just yet, but I'm sure that will help, with corrosion down here. And lately, I've been putting a little bit of Sil Glide on this bracket. Seems to prevent corrosion. Of course, it's not to lubricate or anything, it's just to kind of protect it. Before we do that, however, I'm just gonna brush these with a little wire wheel. Just make sure you're wearing safety glasses if you're using this. That's good enough. We're in Southern California. We don't get a lot of, corrosion or anything, but just a little dab of this, and then just kind of smooth that around without touching the rotor, of course. You don't want to get any grease or anything like that on the rotor, because that'll get on the pads and then you won't stop so well. Mostly just focused on the little channel where those clips sit. Now we can put the new clips on, and they snap into place pretty well. These are not OEM, these are aftermarket, and so you never know how those are going to work, but these ones look pretty good. And then I do like to put some of this Sil Glide on the back of the pad, and that's really, more than anything, it just kind of dampens the vibration and noises that do happen, especially with brakes. Any point of contact, the metal points of contact will, they'll start to vibrate, or that's just to kind of dampen some of the noise. And make sure you get a little bit on the ends here so that the brake pad can slide freely. You don't want to use too much grease because it will attract dust. And this one's kind of unique. You kind of put it in here at an angle, get past the edge of that little clip, if we can, there we go, and then just push it on. And you can see that these little springs, they're pulling the pad away from the rotor. That's what they're designed to do. Same with the inboard pad, a little bit at the ends, and same thing, just kind of put that in at an angle. That looks good. See, they're both pushing outward. All right, now we can put the caliper back on. Just kind of guide that over the pad. Sometimes you have to pull in a little bit on the slide pins. That looks good. And we can put these bolts back in. Let's get those started. And here I'm going to use that same 15mm open end wrench Here's my torque wrench. This is a 85062 by Gear Wrench. All right, and then we can torque those to 26 foot-pounds. Same with this bottom one. I just had to get a shorter socket to torque this. I'll just tighten that by rotating the slide pin. All right, and then torque that to 26 foot-pounds as well. There we go. All right, and then don't forget to plug this back in over here. Looks good, and you're done. Now just remember to step on the brake pedal a few times, which will push the caliper piston back out, pushing those pads up against the rotor where they need to be. Now when you do this, don't press the brake pedal all the way to the floor. That can damage the seals in your master cylinder. Just press it down about halfway a few times until it feels firm. And then just don't forget to double check the master cylinder and top off that fluid as needed. Remember this one says the .4 fluid, so make sure you do get the right type. Hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. I'll get a link in the description where you can pick up some of these parts and tools used in the video as well. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck.